send us any questions you might have or comments using the chat. And if you want to be anonymous, you can use the Q&A tool on the bottom of your screen. I would like to start by inviting our first guest to the table to introduce himself and then to explain a little bit to us our LGBTQ+ world. Please welcome Zeni doVale.
Hi, everybody. Well, thank you very much for introducing me, Juliana. I want to say, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, depending on where you are right now. And I want to say thank you very much for the Prysmian Group for putting this event together and for inviting me here. I am also Brazilian. I identify as a non-binary person, so you can talk to me using any pronouns, he, she, they, whatever you feel that it's easier for you. And I'm very honored because Prysmian gave me a slideshow to present you with a little bit of an introductory guide that we can use to further learn about how to be more friendly, more welcoming, be an ally to LGBTQ+ people. So thank you very much, Juliana. I'm gonna go ahead and then share my screen. Oh, it says that I cannot screen share. Can somebody help me maybe? It says host disabled screen sharing. Okay, I think I'm gonna be able to do it now. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see the slides? Ju, can you confirm? I cannot see the Zoom call anymore.
Yes, can all see your screen.
Okay, so we're gonna get started with our moment today with these slides, and you can already, any questions that you have, you can already start writing them in the chat, and then we're gonna hopefully get back to it later. First of all, I wanted to give you some meaning about what LGBTQ means. You see the other slide, right, Ju? Because sometimes it really freezes on the previous slide.
Yes,
are you seeing the illustration now? Are you able to see the illustration? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, the first 4 letters of the acronym have been used since the 1990s, and the acronym is used to represent a diverse range of sexualities and gender identities, referring to anyone who is transgender and or similar gender attracted to. And we have L for lesbian, G for gay, B for bisexual, T for transgender, Q for queer or questioning, and we have many other groups that are represented by the plus sign, and these are the groups who don't necessarily identify with the previous letters. And why is it so important for us to use the plus when referring to this community? Well, because while variations such as LGBT or LGBTQ are often used, many advocates argue that the addition of the plus is important and shouldn't be overlooked. The purpose of the acronym is to be representative of the tremendous diversity of people who are attracted to the same or similar gender and transgenders. And the addition of the plus is better able to fully capture that diversity. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. Now we're gonna get into a little bit of a further detailing about what each of the main letters represent. Lesbian is a woman who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to other women. Women and non-binary people may use this term to describe themselves. Now, gay is a person who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to members of the same gender. Men, women, and non-binary people may use this term to describe themselves. Now, we know that gay is mostly used to refer to men, but really any person can use to identify that they are attracted to the same gender. Bisexual is a person who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to more than one sex, gender, or gender identity, though not necessarily simultaneously in the same way or to the same degree. And this is sometimes written as bisexual plus or bi plus to incorporate many non-monosexual identities, such as pansexual, fluid, or queer, okay? Transgender is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity and or expression is different from cultural expectations based on the sex that they were assigned at birth. And queer is a term often used to express a spectrum of identities and orientations that are counter to the mainstream. Is often used as a catch-all to include many people, including those who do not identify as exclusively straight and or folks who have non-binary or gender expansive identities, like myself. And like all identities, you should only refer to someone as queer when they have let you know that they identify that way. Now I'd like to share with you this graphic where you can have a better understanding about the differences between identity, attraction, expression, and sex. I know that there is a lot of text right here in this image, but don't worry, this slideshow is gonna be shared with you, so you will be able to further get into the details of what this graphic is trying to explain here. But just to give you a little bit of an idea, I'm gonna go into the main details about the graphic around the person. So the identity is how you in your head experience and define your gender based on how much you align or don't align with what you understand the options for gender to be. Now, attraction is how you find yourself feeling drawn or not drawn to some other people in sexual, romantic, and or other ways, often categorized within gender. Sex is the typical traits you're born with or develop that we think of as sex characteristics, as well as the sex you were assigned at birth. And then expression is how you present gender through your actions, clothing, demeanor, to name a few, and how those presentations are viewed based on social expectations. Again, we're going to share these files so you will be able to read them better and get a full, deeper understanding later, okay? Now we're going to talk about some terms to avoid when referring to LGBTQ plus people. Beginning with gay, you should not refer to these people as a gay or gays. Gay should be used as an adjective, not a noun. So for example, we have, she works hard to ensure gays feel accepted at work. This is not the way to go. The most respectful way would be, she works hard to ensure gay employees feel accepted at work. So you can see that we have the addition, the inclusion of employees, because as we say, gay should be used as an adjective, not a noun. Transgender, always use the word transgender as an adjective and not a noun. Example, Melanie is a transgendered or a transgender. No, Melanie is a transgender or trans woman. Again, adjective, not a noun. Sexual preference or lifestyle choice. These terms, they suggest that lesbian, gay, or bisexual people have the ability to choose their sexual orientation, which is the correct way to say it, or gender identity. So as an example of what not to do, Matthias should be able to talk openly about his sexual preferences at work. Again, sexual preferences is not the correct way to say it. Matthias should be able to talk openly about his sexual orientation at work. The terms sexual preference and lifestyle choice, like I said, suggest that people have the ability to choose, and this is not the case. And historically, anti-LGBTQ groups have used these terms to imply that LGBTQ characteristics or chosen characteristics, and thus can be cured. So when we see these kinds of rules and these kinds of examples, they really have a very deep and historic meaning that we may be being part of something that we don't want. Okay, so these are the way to go. Now we have a timeline of major events in the LGBTQ plus community, beginning with the foundation of the Society for Human Rights in 1924. Then we have in 1955, Daughters of Abilities, the first LGBT rights organization. In 1969, there was the riot at the Stonewall Inn in New York City. And this became a big, huge turning point in the LGBTQ community history. Though few records of the actual raid and riots that followed exist, the oral history of that time has been captured by the participants. And then 1 year after that, in celebration of the date of the riots that the community stood up for themselves, then that's how the Pride March began in 1970. Now we've been doing the Pride March for over 50 years all around the world, but everything began with the throwing of a brick at the Stonewall and riots in New York City. In 1979, there was the National March in Washington for lesbian and gay rights. In 1990, another big event, the World Health Organization declassified homosexuality as a mental disorder. And this was actually on the date of May 17th, which was celebrated just this week. And that's now recognized as the day to fight against homophobia, lesbian phobia, bisexual phobia, LGBTQ phobia in general. Then in the 1990s, that decade, we had DOMA and the policy of don't ask, don't tell. This timeline is also very related to the history of the LGBTQ movement in the United States. And because they had so many really turning points, that's also why it is so connected to the LGBTQ history in general as well. I'm sorry, my English is a little rusty. Then in 2015, we had another turning point, especially for the American culture, which was the case of Obergefell and versus Hodges, that the case of a marriage between two men went to the Supreme Court of the US, and the Supreme Court ruled that a state cannot interfere, cannot deny marriage to any kind of couple. So that became the event that stood as the approval of the LGBTQ marriage in the United States and was celebrated all over the world. Then in 2020, we had protections for LGBTQ from discrimination based on sex. Also related to the United States, they conduct a lot of surveys and research about the LGBTQ community. So here we have a few statistics about this community that are more specific to the United States, but we can have an idea of how it also happens around the world. Of course, in some cultures, the statistics are gonna be better than in other countries and cultures. The statistics are gonna be a little worse than these. But here we go to present you a little bit of a larger picture. More than 1 in 3 LGBTQ Americans faced discrimination of some kind in the past year. To avoid the experience of discrimination, more than 50% of LGBTQ Americans report hiding a personal relationship at work. Around 3 in 10 LGBTQ Americans faced difficulties last year accessing necessary medical care, including more than 50% transgender Americans. 15 of LGBTQ Americans report postponing or avoiding medical treatment due to discrimination. And transgender individuals face unique obstacles to accessing health care. And this is the state of the LGBTQ community in 2021. We're not looking 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We're looking at this data right now. So people who are still thinking that LGBT community is trying to push an agenda and they shouldn't because they have rights enough or everything has already been guaranteed, not exactly. We see from this data that we're far from the ideal scenario yet. Now let's go to a guide of pronouns. First of all, pronouns matter. Using someone's proper pronouns makes a difference in the mental health and well-being of everyone, but particularly transgender and GNC individuals. It is a powerful affirmation of self for transgender and GNC individuals. It validates one's identity, encourages authenticity, and builds truly inclusive and supportive cultures. So avoid saying preferred pronouns. These are not pronouns of choice. These are not preferred pronouns. These are the pronouns to refer to someone. So picture you who may be a cisgender person or a straight person. You would not like to be called by the opposite gender to the one that you identify with. So really respect everybody's decision to be called by their pronouns, and always remember to eliminate the word preferred before pronouns, okay? While some languages have no distinctions of grammatical gender and are categorized as genderless, others are constructed around binary gender. Example, languages like Spanish classify nouns as either masculine or feminine, and some community members are advocating for gender-neutral alternatives. We're gonna get into this detail in the next slide where I show a few examples, okay? When meeting someone new, introduce yourself and state your pronouns, then listen and see if they use their identifying pronouns. And if not, ask in a tactful manner. In introductions, it is also okay to ask the individual how they would like to be addressed. Example, hi, my name is Zeni. I go by she, her, them, they pronouns. How should I refer to you? Then when you accidentally misgender someone, it is important to address your mistake and apologize sincerely and calmly. Correct yourself, but do not focus in conversation around the mistake or the pronouns. Do not attempt to justify your mistake. Thank the person when they correct you. This reinforces healthy habits of giving and receiving constructive feedback, taking accountability, and respecting fellow workers. Like I said, remember always the first rule, avoid using the phrase preferred pronouns. Then also include your pronouns in email signatures to promote this transparency and inclusivity in the workplace and to help others feel more comfortable doing so as well. Overall, utilize empathy when searching for ways to better connect to unfamiliar concepts or situations. Empathy is an important pillar to lean on. In creating spaces of belonging, empathy can build trust and a sense of relief. Now on to a guide to the pronouns. Here we have a table of content showing the different kinds of pronouns, how most people identify with. Then you have the forms of using he, him, his, and the subject, for example, he asked. The object, I told him. Possessive, the office is his, and reflexive, he reminds himself. Now I see that for most of you, the news are towards the bottom rows. The pronouns for ze, ze, zir, and zirs. Remember to always pronounce this one with a long E. Z. Z asked, and then for the object, I told here. Here, the way to differentiate here from he or him is always that long E. So this is a really useful tip. Just remember to extend the vowel E, okay? Again, this is a little bit hard to remember at first, but we're gonna share this slide with you so you can practice at your own pace. Then a few tips before I go. Find some common ground. When discussing relationships, marriage, parenting, and family, focus conversation on common ground, beliefs, hopes, and dreams. Focus on what unites us, not on what differentiates us. Validate when others share. Holding confidence and validate another person's feelings when they share issues around orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Third, refocus conversations. Tactfully refocus conversations with coworkers in a more accurate, supportive, and inclusive direction. Very important, call out humor. Tactfully call out humor or comments aimed at or about someone because they are LGBTQ. I know that this can be very challenging, but a great first step to become an ally to LGBTQ people is calling out humor when you're around people that are making disrespectful jokes. And even with or without LGBTQ people to speak up for themselves, you can join this conversation and call out the humor. 5, acknowledge and ask for help. When talking with someone who is LGBTQ, acknowledge and ask for help when not certain about how to talk about something. So these are 5 steps about how you can become a better ally. I believe we're at the end of my introductory presentation, our guide to being more friendly and more respectful to LGBTQ people and promoting inclusion. My name is Zeni doVale. I work as a diversity and inclusion analyst at Credere here in Brazil. And I felt very honored and flattered presenting all of these topics for you. And for that, I thank you, Prysmian Group, for the invitation. Now we go back to Juliana, is that it?
Yes. If you stop sharing your presentation, please.
Can you guys
stop sharing my presentation?
Can you guys still hear and see me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Zeni, for this amazing presentation. It was very helpful. We got amazing feedback on the chat. And just a little reminder to everybody, all this material will be shared with all of you. So you have that as a ground to go back to when you need information. Now, moving on to our table. Before moving on to questions, I would like to invite all my fellow panelists who are going to join Zeni to introduce themselves, starting with one of our Prysmian colleagues who has been an active member of the North America Side-by-Side Initiative, and also is a huge leadership sponsor for an ally for gender-related inclusion topics. Please welcome Brian Moriarty.
Hi, good morning, actually, not good afternoon. It's nice to be here with everybody. I've been with the company for about 13 years and very excited to participate today in what an important topic. I'm a father of 3 children, 2 in law school and 1 in high school. One of my children identifies as LGBTQ, so this is particularly something that's close to my heart, and I'm just happy to be here.
Thanks, Brian. Now moving on to our first female invite, Claire Roher.
Hi, sorry, getting a little bit of issues trying to turn my video on, but I'm Claire Roher. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a material engineer at Procter & Gamble, and I work in manufacturing at a plant in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I am also the Gable site leader there and the Gable site startup leader there, which is our LGBTQ plus affinity group.
Welcome, Claire. Next up, we have David Norman.
Hello, everyone. I am David Norman. I'm a cisgender, openly gay male. My pronouns are he, him. And I have worked in the HR business partner and diversity space throughout my entire career and have a lot of experience working with different LGBTQ ERGs and affinity groups. So really excited to be here.
Welcome, David. Next up, Kevin Foster.
Hi, for some reason my video will not start, but I am a bioscience development engineer for a company called Torex Technologies in Atlanta. We're a division of Madison Capital. I have been with the company 35 years. I started my career in 1983 after graduating college as a very closeted gay male. My pronouns are he, him. Okay, maybe my video. Okay, there's my video. Technical issues. Yes, I've been, like I say, almost 4 decades. I was out to some family and friends, but at work was very, very closeted, and was actually pushed out of the closet in 1993 by a manager and a minion. And today, our company is all about diversity and inclusion. It took getting the right HR representatives to pretty much pull us all out, pull us out of the closet. We actually flew the pride flag in 2019 for the month of June, and it was a major event for us LGBTQ individuals that work for the company, especially a long time, and worked through a lot of dark times for us. But realizing now we have been moving forward, not as fast as I would like or any of us would like, but we're moving in the right direction. That's pretty much my introduction.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, that is our table together with Zeni, of course. Now I'm gonna move on to our first set of questions. Again, feel free to share any questions you have on the Q&A section or on the chat, and we will address them as long as we have the time. All right, my first question here is for Brian. In your opinion, why is it imperative to have these conversations about LGBTQ plus inclusion in the workplace?
Yeah, thank you for that. So diversity and inclusion are more important issues for corporations, and it's been very evident the last few years. However, despite that, many LGBTQ employees continue to face discrimination, discomfort, in some cases, even danger in the workplace. So it's important that we build a framework of true inclusion so we have positive everyday interactions as much as we have formal processes and organizational processes in place. There are some interesting statistics I had here to share. 4.5% of the population in the United States identifies as LGBTQ. That's over 11 million people, of which 88% are working age. Many things in place, but despite the legal rights, nearly 50% of LGBTQ employees remain closeted on the job. And there are some statistics as to why that is. 38% of people feel they might be stereotyped. 36% of people feel that they might be making people feel uncomfortable. They worry, 31% of people, about losing connections at work. And then very strangely to me, there's a statistics here that 27% worry that people would be attracted to them. And that's just very sad that people would have to have that fear, which is very real. So for me, like, this is a great conversation to have. And then I like the part of the comment in regards to it's how we behave and interact. It will really drive change. And we want to have an inclusive work atmosphere where people feel included, because a blended group of people come together and bringing creative ideas will make us a much stronger, sensitive and aware corporation. That's it for me on that.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, next question I have is, actually going to go back a little bit further to Kevin. He started citing about how he was pushed out of the closet. So my question here is, there are many challenges and complexities that individuals can face when coming out. Would you feel comfortable sharing a little more of your story, Kevin?
Certainly. I was lucky in that I found allies in the straight community that accepted me for who I was, understood that my sexuality was just a small part of my makeup. It's, you know, and it didn't enter the conversation. I'm sure there were whispers behind my back when people started figuring it out. In 2000 is when I really just burst out of the closet. I've been with my partner for 35 years. I referred to him in the late 80s and early 90s as a she, and traded off Christmas parties and work functions with gay women to try to hide our sexuality as much as I could. It was when someone found out I was at the March on Washington. I was, in fact, a manager, or I was in Washington during the March on Washington. I think it was in '93. That's when the push started and the whisper started. But I had a good support network in the straight community. I really was the only openly gay person or gay person that I knew of in the organization. I have, over the last 4 decades, watched the change that I now speak of my husband, Bill, openly. And people ask questions about what Bill and I are going to do. These are guys in the engineering department. I feel that there are some stereotypes I still have gotten over the last few years. This is the South. I love you, Kevin, but I think homosexuality is wrong. No, you don't. Bye. It's just been a very interesting journey, and it's just an honor to be a part of this panel of diversity and inclusion. I think we're all grouped together by everyone else as one. And we're all so different and diverse that understanding who we are to our core, whether we're transgender, non-binary, whatever you identify as, that needs to be recognized and respected within the workplace and within your personal life. I guess that's all I got on that one. I start rambling sometimes, so just kind of wave at me that I've gotten off topic.
Thanks, Kevin. That was amazing to hear.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll ask actually the same question out, but to Zeni, so you can see a different perspective. How was it for you, Zeni, when you had to come out?
Okay, well, before I get into the answer, I just want to say, Kevin, I'm really sorry about what you went through, being pushed out of the closet. And it was amazing to hear your story. Well, my story is a little bit different because I feel like the closet that I was in was very transparent. You could really see through. As you can see, I'm very clear about who I am. But I did experience some kind of difficulties when trying to get into the workplace. not where I am, of course. I am surrounded today by a very loving group of people, and I've been working with these same group of people for almost 10 years now. So I always felt very welcomed. My coming out was kind of going a little bit further. So for example, 10 years ago when I started working, I didn't look like this. So it was mostly a evolving kind of process for me. But before I got into the workplace, I was applying for a few jobs and for a few internships, and I felt on the spot the experience of discrimination. So I was never really able to be 100% discreet, as we call it in the community. People really always knew, even if I dressed very formal, when I had my hair back, natural black, no makeup, people could still tell that there was something different about me. And sometimes I didn't get the position just because of that. So back then, it was really troublesome for me because it made me insecure to be myself, and I felt like it was wrong to be me. But thankfully, it steered me in the right way to find the right group of people in the right company, because now I can 110% be myself. And today, my official job position is diversity and inclusion analyst. So I turned something that closed so many doors for me into something that now opens the door for many people to be welcomed into our company and our environment. And it's just really amazing to see how much the community has evolved, the way that companies like Prysmian Group itself are doing so many events and bringing awareness to people. And that's all we wish for.
That is
so that's a
completely-
little bit of my story.
Thank you. That is very inspiring. And I'm very happy that we have people like you to welcome every type of person in the workplace. All right, my next question now is for Claire. As we've heard over the course of this year, how we speak and the language you use can play a major role in creating inclusive spaces. Why is it important to understand the impact of the language we use specifically around the LGBTQ+ community?
Yeah, so first, I really like the choice of the word around for that question, because it's talking about the LGBTQ+ community, as well as who your audience is while you're talking, because I feel like that's a really important part of allyship, is how you're talking about the LGBTQ+ community when there's nobody there in the community to watch you, because that's really when the allyship is needed the most. And then we did just have like the training of how to refer to the community, what the topics in the community are, what respect looks like in that space. It's taking that and taking that with you as you go forward. So that's using some of these terms for your own life. So like when referring to your significant other, saying partner rather than husband or wife, because as an ally, people have nothing to lose by doing that. But it can help to make your coworkers, your friends, your family more comfortable, and help to make you feel, or help to make members of the LGBTQ+ community feel safer, while also cultivating a more inclusive environment. I think especially in the workplace, when employees aren't bringing their whole selves to work, you are missing out on who they are as a person, but they're also devoting their energy to filtering themselves so that they can feel safe enough to do the work that they can do. So they're not putting their whole selves into their work. They're not putting their whole selves into their company. They're putting their whole selves into, should I say this? Should I talk about what I did over the weekend? Is this outfit okay? Does it say too much? Does my hair signal something? And those kinds of decisions. But that's with every single interaction in the workplace. So by creating that safety and inclusivity, you're fostering a more welcoming environment for those in the LGBTQ+ community. And as a personal story, with the importance of maintaining that consistency in the language that you use and the allyship that you have for the LGBTQ plus community. I had a coworker who was making negative comments about their neighbor who identified in the LGBTQ plus community, and they didn't know that I was walking around the corner. And so their response is, oh, that was something that I would have never said around you. But we had a conversation about that and we talked through it, but I'm still not ever going to be fully comfortable being myself around that coworker. So kind of the impact of how even like a little not acknowledging a off-color joke here and there can create an unwelcoming environment for the LGBTQ plus community.
Thanks, Claire. It was very eye-opening, I guess, for everybody here. All right, my next question now is for David. How have allies and role models impacted your career journey? And can you share the importance of allies and role models in your career through an LGBTQ plus lens?
Yeah, absolutely. I first would love to just build on a little bit of what Claire said and just also mention that when it comes to language, it's always evolving. And so it does require some constant education. You need to stay up on the resources that are coming out. I mean, even as a gay male myself, I mean, pronouns, I need to educate myself continuously. I mean, if you think back to like the mid 90s and sitcoms, I don't know if anyone's watched any shows from the mid 90s, but they have not aged well. I mean, the word gay was used as a slur super commonly in family friendly shows. And I think you see that even with other groups. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, it was not okay to use the word Black to describe communities of color. So I just think it's important to note that the language is always evolving. So back to your question though, to the point of allies, I mean, I think for me, allies have kind of been everything. I have not had any real traumatic experiences being openly gay in my career. I will say that when I first came out of school and joined a fairly conservative defense company, they definitely had all the right things in place and the right programs and ERGs and structures, but I didn't see a lot of people, there wasn't a lot of representation. And so I think for me, joining the ERG and seeing so many straight allies in that group who took a real interest in getting to know me as a person and a real interest in my career, that really helped, because I think for me, it was more, the things I experienced were more subtle. It was more just, you can tell when you're making someone uncomfortable just with, my voice and my mannerisms. And I just felt like I needed to, try to sound more masculine when I was presenting to groups and things like that. And especially in some of my experiences, working in manufacturing facilities, there were just definitely a lot of moments where I felt like I was making people uncomfortable just simply being who I am. And really having allies helped me through that, particularly in one organization, having a senior executive level who kind of took me under his wing in a mentor capacity and really was my champion and really helped me kind of just get more comfortable being who I am at work. It took a few years though. And, it wasn't really until my mid-career that I started to feel like very, very comfortable being myself. Because it's really hard. I mean, even if you don't have traumatic experiences at work necessarily, I mean, I grew up in a very rural area and I had a very hard time figuring myself out in high school and just shedding. I mean, that's stuff I carry with me to this day. I mean, being able to, you don't just shed that. And so a lot of LGBTQ folks are carrying those wounds with them into the workforce, and whether they're just perceiving that people view them differently or whether it's real, they're still going to carry those wounds. And so I think allyship is very important. And I think there's simple ways that you can be an ally, whether it's whether it's, I mean, it might sound cheesy, but I mean, even just having any LGBTQ type of decor or, you know, a rainbow token somewhere in your office. I know some programs I've seen have like little placards where it'll say like, this is a safe LGBTQ space, or I'm an ally. And those little things, and like Claire said, you know, using language like partners, those subtle things make a really big difference in taking a genuine interest in LGBTQ employees, you know, just treating them like you would anyone else, not trying to tokenize it. You know, for me, I think when I'm thinking back through some of the allies I've had, you know, if there's ways in a genuine way to kind of weave in, oh, you know, my son or daughter identifies as LGBTQ. You want it to be genuine and sincere, though. You don't want it to be like, oh, I met a gay guy on the sidewalk once. Like you want it to feel natural. But I think that those little things really help people feel like they can bring their true selves to work.
Thank you very much. All right, next question now to Zeni. What are some strategies for seeking and signaling allyship?
Well, there are a few, of course. And I also want to thank David for sharing a few of his ideas and his experiences. The first thing that I want to say is that be careful about how you interpret other people, because not everybody is easily recognizable as being part of the LGBTQ community, and you want to be respectful to those people. Not everybody looks like me or dresses like me, of course. So the best thing that you can do is really to become an empath and build that safe place, that safe environment for people to open up to you. And you can do it in very small ways, even just, for example, sharing a show that you watch or an article that you read that mentions or includes something about LGBTQ people. That's one way of building this kind of trust and companionship that can be respectful to everybody, even straight people. If you try to build that allyship, but you're not sure if the person's really part of the community. But really, I think that a few of the things that we presented in the slides at the beginning of our moment here today, about how you include your pronouns and how you present yourself in the workplace, and even the words that you pick are gonna really share and show if you're the kind of person that people feel comfortable around to open up. So first of all, don't ever push someone out of the closet. It can be something very traumatizing. Even if you do it privately to someone, if you confront someone and say, hey, I think that you're part of the community, why don't you open up to me? No, people do it when they feel comfortable to do so. So the best thing that you can do is really to build the platform where people feel safe and that they know that they have your shoulder to rely on whenever they need. And just trust the process, just respect the timing of everybody. Everybody has a different time. Sometimes they are still figuring out themselves. It can be faster or easier for you to spot someone, but sometimes it's harder and slower for that person. So if you want some specific tips, I would say start using and referring to your pronouns. You know, when you introduce yourself, say what are your pronouns, and engage in conversations about diversity and inclusion, and share your thoughts about really building this safe place. I would say that. That's a great start.
Thank you, Zeni. All right, still on this topic, but back to Claire. What can cisgender and straight people do to better support colleagues within the LGBTQ+ community?
Yeah, so the best thing that you can do is to make your colleagues feel valued for who they are and their unique contributions to your work group, to your company, to your community. Because there's a big difference between feeling tolerated, and feeling accepted. And there's a big difference between feeling accepted and feeling valued. So maybe as a manager, that means checking in with your the people that you manage, and letting them know that their experiences, how they've brought themselves into your work group, is valued greatly, but also showing up. So more than just the interpersonal and the direct face-to-face, it's using this inclusive language, it's using these visible signs of allyship, it's participating in allyship in a way that allies have nothing to lose from. And so by normalizing some of these conversations, like I think we've talked about it with pronouns, using pronouns in your signature, in your introductions, all in your department meeting, stuff like that, putting it on your bio slide, that starts that conversation of, these are my pronouns. So that not only signals to other people that you're a safe space to talk about something like that, but it makes it easier for other people to put their pronouns in their, who are affected and are in the LGBTQ+ community, to have their accurate pronouns being used for them. And also with like the language that we've talked about with gender neutral language, like partner and stuff like that. So really like participating in your resource group for the LGBTQ+ community and being active there. All of these things just kind of come together to support an inclusive environment for the LGBTQ+ community, where people feel safe, happy, and healthy coming to work.
Thanks, Claire. Now back to Kevin. What do you think are some key behaviors that individuals can change to be more inclusive of the LGBTQ+ community?
Listen. Just listen to your colleagues, listen to their stories, be there for them. And the one thing, you know, I'm going back to what Zeni said earlier, I looked at myself in the mirror decades ago and realized I had the ability to go into a social setting or a work setting and not be immediately stereotyped. And so many of my brothers and sisters have never had that kind of opportunity, and it's something that I have appreciated tremendously. And I work for the people I work with now. There are quite a few younger lesbians, gay guys, and I do my best to just mentor them or just talk to them, just listen to them, listen to their stories. And I think that's our allies. That's the best thing that they can do for the community is listen to our stories and process it. And don't start realizing that even though I'm grouped together with amazing people in the LGBTQ community, we're as diverse as any marginalized group could be, from our educational backgrounds to pretty much everything. But again, it's finding those people that you can share your life with openly and try to, have them realize that we are all different. And if you really want to be an ally, listen to us and make your decisions on, who we are based on our character and not our sexuality or who we identify as. It's a work in progress. I've had to, I'm the only gay man in my department, and I've had to educate a few people that, some of the things that they say and do occasionally just aren't acceptable. and it may be not even in reference to me, but people in transgender community or people that identify as non-binary. What does that matter? I was raised by a single mother, and I was raised to judge people, not judge, but look at people based on their character, on who they are, and nothing else. And that to me is, the biggest thing that you can bring to our community is listening to us and realizing we're diverse and we're fabulous.
That is very true. Thank you so much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
All right, next question to David. What role can employees play to help drive the LGBTQ plus acceptance and leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with solid leadership and solid HR policies and practices, and really ingraining those topics into the culture. I mean, I've worked for organizations where it definitely feels like more of a box checking activity, where maybe there's a gay couple in one of the training video vignettes that people are required to take once a year, but it's entirely different to really weave it into the culture and values system of the broader organization. So I think, having that top-down approach, having it be a visible priority for senior leaders, having it being things that are discussed, during Pride Month, during National Coming Out Day. I mean, there's various points throughout the year where you can easily celebrate these things and make them a big deal at work. But I think particularly in the LGBTQ space, I think visibility and representation and top level support is really important, because I mean, we're still very much fighting for legal rights, and it's still illegal to be gay in a lot of different countries. And I mean, you could still be fired for being gay in 28 states until last summer in this country. And, when we're talking about, survivor benefits and death benefits and just lots of different things, there's real tangible issues that are still facing our community. And so I think having that visibility and representation at the senior most levels and having it be a clear priority, I think that's really important. And then, at the ground level, sort of not tolerating things. So, if someone in a manufacturing plant, if you see something, say something, report it to HR. HR should handle it swiftly and ensure that those types of things are not tolerated. And unfortunately, change and growth doesn't come from a comfort zone. And so if people are going to be uncomfortable, then you need to have a culture that says this isn't the place for you. And so I think you need to draw really hard lines, and you need to really weave it into everything you do, from the ground up to the top.
All right, thank you, David. Now, my last directional question will be back to Brian. Brian, how's Prysmian leadership actively working to create a more inclusive environment for the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, what's cool is I have a long list of things to update the group on, so that's very exciting. First thing is, at the global level, we have a diversity recruitment policy that's in place and very proactive. In 2021, we launched a diversity and inclusion digital training suite. In addition to that, the company has a strong anti-harassment policy and always has available to our employees a compliance hotline. At the North America level, we have a strong employee assistance program that's there to help people and can help them with problems in regards to job performance, health, mental stress, emotional well-being, just general anything to help the individual. Also, Prysmian's announced a new parental support policy where all parents are supported regardless of your gender identity, sexual orientation, or family structure. So that's pretty awesome. And then also right off the press here, and our HR group's been really, really good. They're going to create for the Pride Month in June, a LGBTQ and employee resource group, ERG, which we've heard some of our guest panelists reference, from their past experience will be here This ERG will be our next step towards improving the experience of our employees by understanding their specific challenges and creating a support network for members of the LGBTQ plus community. And we urge colleagues around the world, and especially our leaders, to make the extra effort to do what it takes to be supportive and inclusive in everything that we do as a group. I had a survey question pop up there. So it's pretty cool, that list. It's exciting. And you know what? Over time, it needs to get longer and quickly. And I know that from our HR team to people on the North America leadership team, we're committed to being an inclusive environment and in support of not this week, this group, this panel. And it's a lot of progress that we're seeing.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing that with us. All right, now I would like to ask our host to please pin all of our panelists to the screen, and we can move on to the questions you guys asked on the chat. Let me know when you guys see everybody. Awesome. All right, let me go through my notes so I can start from the beginning. Okay, the first question we have, and I'll let you all feel free to choose what you feel comfortable answering. My first question was, are there any cultural differences between females who identify as lesbian versus gay?
So on this one, it's really an individual basis. The different terms have different histories, and each person has different histories, has a different history with each term. So it's really case by case, but there's no broad sweeping difference.
All right, thanks. Okay, next one. What if we do not know what people want to be associated with? And I'm guessing that is gender associated, and they are afraid to tell you.
I mean, I think.
Sorry.
You can go ahead, Claire.
You always have the option of just referring to them by their name. If you're not sure and you're afraid that by choosing you're going to hurt somebody, just use their name and talk to them directly. When you are talking about somebody, you can just use their name. It might sound a little unnatural to you, but that's probably better than the potential for hurting someone.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think you could also weave in your own pronouns, and then that would show them that it's a safe space to tell you theirs if they feel comfortable.
Very well put. Thanks. Next one. What is your advice to someone who's transitioning while working with people who know them physically at the sex they were assigned at birth, but they are transitioning to a different gender?
I think on this one, given that a lot of organizations still have not defined all of the complexities that need to be in place to help someone go through this in the workplace, I think it's really important to encourage people to partner with HR early on, just so that, because there are complexities and there's a lot of things that are going to come up. And so I think it's important to partner with HR and then just show your support individually. I mean, just be there, support them, listen to them, be empathetic. That would be my advice.
Awesome, thank you. Next one. We have noticed the more common use of the queer term as an umbrella term, embracing anyone who isn't cisgender or straight. The person who wrote that question said they personally use it more often than LGBTQI+. Does using it as an umbrella term offends people who exclusively identifies as a queer?
So I can speak to this because I personally identify as queer. I don't feel offended when people use it as an umbrella term. However, I do try to stay cognizant that there is a history with this term, and it is a reclaimed term by the community, and there are many people who are uncomfortable with it as a result of their history with the word and how it has been used as a slur against the community in the past. I think if you're uncomfortable about or uncertain about what you should use, I would default to LGBTQ+, and especially if you're not sure the comfort level of the community that you're speaking with.
Awesome. All right, next one. What advice can you give for LGBTQ+ employees who still have to deal with don't ask, don't tell superiors?
Well, I don't know if this is gonna sound kind, but maybe it's time to consider another work environment. There are companies who are a great example out there being welcoming and educating themselves and supporting initiatives for people to be themselves, fully hug themselves and accept themselves. Maybe your company is already that kind of place and just your superior is not. So I would say that you have to take a look at the larger picture and see if it matches your personal values. At the end of the day, we're all here trying to do something that we love and build a career, but there are a lot more things to making the choice if you really want to stay at a company other than just the activities that you do. So really look into your future and see if it still makes sense for you being there.
Thanks, Annie. And for the Prysmian Group, I will say anybody can go see their human resources business partner and talk about that. We're always open. We will always hear you and try to do the best for you guys.
Yes,
I'd like
and
to
to add
to that.
sometimes
ahead,
the
please,
option
Claire.
doesn't necessarily have to be leaving the company. Sometimes it means you would be more comfortable in a different work group. Because I feel like a lot of people are intimidated by the idea of leaving the entire company because spend a lot of time building resources in a network somewhere. And everybody's at different stages in learning. So I still recommend going to your HR partner and saying, this is why I don't feel comfortable in this group, and this is where I would like to go, or this is where I feel like I could fit better, so that that manager gets the feedback that they made their employee uncomfortable, and that they have room to grow, but so that you don't have to be there in that process of growth, and that can be handled by HR independently of your career and your comfort at work.
I would like to add to that. I worked through a period here with an HR director that there was a guy that I was working with on a certain project that kept throwing around the F word. They didn't know I was gay, but it was to the point I'd never gone to HR. I went to HR, and the HR director asked me, well, did you tell them that that offended you? And I was still in the closet. I said, no, I shouldn't have to. They're grown. And the response was, well, you need to tell them that that offends you. And if they do it again, then we'll say something. Fortunately, we've evolved a long way past that. Too many of our community do not have HR representation, but the one thing that I would do is to document any interaction you have that is negative towards you, and document anything that, like I just described, that you get from an HR department. I'm not a litigious person, but if it comes to a point that you are being discriminated against openly and it's acceptable, you need to take action. And there are a lot of resources to help you.
Yeah, I would also add to that unfortunately, HR comes in all shapes and sizes and all levels of education and awareness. And unfortunately, I've come across a lot of HR folks in my career that are not as educated on these topics as they themselves should be. You know, like I said earlier, these things require continuous learning, and, you know, HR is not perfect. So I would just add that as well.
Yeah, I'll just add one comment to that on behalf of kind of like the company. The compliance hotline is something that we take very seriously at Prysmian, and that does get broad exposure and it gets senior attention by our top HR professionals, which would give anyone attending today's session comfort in knowing that you know that you're going to a very trusted and confidential source there, and encourage people to use our compliance hotline.
Thanks everybody for your input. That was very helpful. Next question. What if I make a mistake and upset somebody? How do I avoid the fear of making a mistake to stop me from trying to be a better ally?
I think, like Zeni said in the presentation earlier, I think all you can do is, you know, very upfront, quickly own it, apologize, but then move on and just learn from it and try not to do it again. You know, because I can tell you from a lot of personal experience, it is extremely uncomfortable when people over apologize and continue to dwell on it and just continue to bring it up when, you know, so I think you quickly own it, you apologize, you learn from it, and you move on.
Completely agree with that. Thanks.
I also would like to add, sorry, do we still have the time, Juliana?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, yes, so one advice that I would give, and just remind you of something that we also spoke on the presentation, is that remember the things that unites us more than the things that differentiates us. So when you remember and when you think about everything that you can have in common with someone, use those things to approach that person. You know, if you make a mistake and a mistake happen, it's okay if you're willing to learn and still be respectful. But above all, my advice would be join the conversation and take this with a very deep meaning. Join the real conversation. Actively listen to people and listen to their thoughts and their feelings. And most of the times when you don't have something to say, just don't say something. Be that ally that is there to listen. You know, people are gonna tell you if they need something from you other than a good ear or a good shoulder. And then in those cases, you can go with your feelings and really try to give the best that you can. But sometimes people just need a safe place to share their thoughts and be heard, you know? So when you're part of the conversation, and the meaning that I want to give is to engage in that discussion, engage in that talk, and don't just worry about what you have to say. Worry about being an active listener and giving the person the place and the space to share how they're feeling. I think you're gonna give a lot of comfort just in that already.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zeni. All right, next question is, can you clarify the use of neopronouns?
The use of what pronouns, sorry?
Pronouns, the sie, his.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna jump already because that's what we talked about during the presentation. Sie is a pronoun that is used similar to they, but it can be even more neutral. So some people who really go for the neutral language and they feel some kind of disturb in using he or she. Sometimes they also don't feel comfortable using they. So sie is a little bit of a broader term that can be even more neutral. So for example, when you're not sure about how to refer to someone that you know that is part of the community, and they haven't clarified what are their pronouns yet, that's when you can use sie. It is the safest place for people who prefer the gender neutral language. Does that answer the question? If the person still would like some detailing, I can find some links to share in the chat.
I think that answers it. Thanks. And don't worry, it gets easier with practice and with acknowledging that that exists. So that piece of advice I can leave you. All right, I think we have time for one last question. And for this one, I would like to hear an answer from each one of you. If you could choose one thing to teach or tell everybody here today, what would it be?
So if I could share one thing with everybody, it's that right now we're talking a lot about like how do you do it, the complexities, the negatives, but there's a lot of joy in accepting somebody and valuing somebody and celebrating somebody and sharing that part of yourself with somebody. And so these are all just tools so that we can all share in that joy and in that pride.
I'm happy to go next. I think, you know, in a very simple sense, I would just, remind people that we're all humans. Whether you're in the LGBTQ umbrella or not, we're all humans, and we all have things in our history that make us unique, and our stories all make us unique. I view diversity as a very, very broad term, and that's the beauty of what we bring to the table, whether that's at work or in our personal lives. And I think that the more that you can be a champion for empathy and listening and storytelling and authenticity, the better the world will be across the board.
I would just like to add that we have made progress. There's a lot left to do, but the fact that we're having a panel discussion like this now and including everyone in our community is just so empowering to me. It's, I'm going to tear up if I keep talking that way, but I love my brothers and sisters in this community. I love them all. Now, there are some that probably are not nice people, but for the most part, everyone I've met in my community, I find a way to connect with them and to feel love for them and empathy. And we are making progress. It's slow, but it's sure. I can turn around for 4 decades and just, my goodness, the progress that we've made thus far is overwhelming. The day that the Supreme Court announced gay marriage was legal, I had 2 straight allies come into my office, and they, said, "What do you think?" And I ugly cried, because I really never thought it was going to happen, but it did happen. And the fact that I can now refer to my husband in any setting, situation, is progress. And it just, again, it's empowering. This whole event has been empowering, and listening to everyone's responses, you feel so included. I mentioned the March on Washington. That was another place that this was in 1993. I ugly cried when we drove out of the city because of the emotions I felt. There were so many of us there, and we were all representing for the world to see. And all of us have got to keep pushing the envelope and pushing for recognition, acceptance, and respect. That is the main thing, is that we are all respected for who we are, what we bring to the table in the corporate world or in life, is just keep pushing the way we are.
Kevin, I have to join you and say that I've been fighting back tears most of this moment. It is indeed a very emotional topic for all of us. And my advice for everybody would be the person that you should expect acceptance the most is you. So the bravest, the kindest, the most historic way that you can honor people who came before us and fought for us to have our rights to be here and discuss all of this today is be 100% your unapologetic self. The birth of the LGBTQ rights modern movement is very often related to the Stonewall riots. And what happened that night was that the community stood up for themselves. When they were confronted, people didn't hide, people didn't lie, they fought back. And a year later, our Pride March began, it was born, and it still happens to this day. Well, except not right now because of the pandemic, but we just celebrated the mark of the 50th year. And the way that you can honor everybody who came before us and were there is to be yourself, because they were there being themselves, being hit, going to jail, fighting discrimination, fighting everything, fighting AIDS, fighting a lot of things just to be themselves. So the most empowering and brave thing that you can do is to try and be your best self, your unapologetic self, your real self. So always remember that.
Real quick, just something I'd like to share that I've come to really embrace and believe, and it's back to some of the earlier comments, that we're a community, a company that wants to thrive and have success, and to have a diverse group of membership with broad perspectives, broad life experiences, feel embraced and welcome through our doors, will just make us a stronger and such more powerful company of diversity and thought. And when I think about the exciting times in front of us in recruiting and attracting new talent to our company, I think that this conversation today is very, gives me reason for hope and optimism.
Thank you to all of our amazing panelists. This has been an incredible experience. After these closing statements, I'm composing myself. I'm trying not to get emotional, but again, thank you. This is a very powerful message. And I would like also to thank everybody that joined us here today. That is a first step, to be open to learn, to be open to talk about these issues. And I hope that this session will be the beginning of a beautiful, inclusive path for all of us in Prysmian and in our lives in general. Thanks. And that will be it for today. Thanks again from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you.